My name is Kate, and this is my amazing guest, Leslie Fye. And I've got your little, okay, you're a licensed professional counselor. Everybody knows you already. So amazing. Thank you. And this was actually Leslie's idea for a topic, grief and loss. And she was just talking about how she's seeing a lot of clients right now coming in experiencing this. And obviously, right, the last couple of years have been big change for us, for all of us, just on an individual level, as a community, and globally. So we are going to, Leslie's going to talk a little bit about what we're all experiencing, I'm sure, and we can ask questions and I'll do some clearing. So our usual format, if that works for you, Leslie.
Works well, works well.
Okay, good. I'm just gonna, so whenever you would you like to
start? Yeah, just, it's interesting that while I'm seeing so many clients that are struggling with grief because of the nature of everything going on in the world, unless they've had a direct loss, like a loss of a loved one, they don't identify as being in a grief process. It's like we're all, or so many of us are all waiting for things to go back to normal. There's just a level, I don't know if you would even call it denial, it's just a lack of awareness of how much has changed and how much may never go back to the same. And in my mind, I think the changes that are coming back are the changes that are happening are beautiful and are intended, but I can't project that onto my clients. So I just wanted that as an aside, like that's just an interesting thing that's happening, that I'm having to help people find and acknowledge the losses in their lives.
Yeah, can I just say it's interesting, because if you're still being traumatized in some way, it's not ended, and then how does that work? Does the grief start when the trauma ends, or do they coexist? What's that look like?
Well, yeah, that's a really great question. When there's not awareness that there's been a loss, then you're in this constant ache for to grab something, and so it's helping them to accept that there is change, and then identify what their ideas are about that change. Is the change, like, what is the belief in their ego about the change? Is the change good? Is the change bad? Is it okay? But in terms of grief in general, in our world, or at least with my clients, I find that so often we don't want to feel the emotions associated with grief, and our bodies are designed to process emotion in a beautiful way, but we can't avoid the emotion. We have to sit with it and trust that you won't be overwhelmed, and trust that you won't get stuck in it. I've been like so privileged to learn about grief from my clients, that there's this beautiful thing that happens when people honor their grief. Like, it's the hardest thing in the world to do, so it sounds kind of contradictory, but they honor the love for whomever and whatever it was when they dive into the emotion of grief, and then they find they're able to process that emotion and let it go, unless there's some complicated belief attached to it, some belief about themselves, some trauma, some past trauma about abandonment. And that's that's often where the work in counseling goes. And really our work here, I think,
Yeah.
if you've got simple grief, to just get quiet and sit with the emotion, it's like going through a river. You just swim through the river. It may be kind of scary, but you swim through it and you feel the emotional cleanse and you come out on the other side.
Right.
I don't want to say always refreshed, but you come out on the other side changed. And but when we have trauma associated with it, whatever form that comes from, whether it's a previous trauma with abandonment, a belief about your unlovability, um, beliefs about what being alone means.
Yeah.
That those are the things that I have to help people sit with and love on and accept, but then release those also. One of the best, more traditional techniques, that I use with my traditional clients who maybe
Yeah.
wouldn't be open to the body code or, easy entity release is EFT, because it, tapping, because it helps them identify in their ego mind where the painful thoughts are, where the painful images are, where the painful feelings in the body are. So we're not denying it anymore. We're not running away from it. We're acknowledging it. And then you're using those acupressure points, to flow, to unlock the flow, to release the trapped emotion. And really, they don't realize it, but something spiritual kind of happens in that moment too. They
Yeah.
tap into their higher selves, whether they know it or not. So,
Right.
and then that doesn't mean that that the sadness around the loss doesn't hurt once we release our trauma and limiting beliefs. It just means we're not as stuck in it and you can go with the flow of it. Because all of our pain sometimes it has lessons to learn, sometimes it has lessons to teach us or opportunities to grow. And sometimes it's, as low as, how do I say this? As low as we go is the greater our love, the greater our pain. And
Yeah.
if you're willing to dive deeper into the pain and not be afraid of it, then you'll come out on the other side being able to embrace the love in a bigger way.
Yeah. So through the grief, through the fear is like you say, is the highest form of love, right? It's the highest level. Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Thank you so much. Yeah. Really amazing. Okay. So yeah, that constant ache, I feel like is so true. And I think the tapping, when you're actually speaking, whether it's an affirmation or, yeah, you're really embodying that. And that's what we have to do. If we can't embody our pain and our grief and feel those emotions, that's when I feel like we're more susceptible to the addiction and just keeping it at bay, right? We're just always keeping it at the edge of our energy field.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
But then knowing that something is always at the edge of our energy field, so always having to fill up with something false.
Right. And it is so true. And I'm sure we've all experienced this. If we just sit with emotions, it doesn't take very long for them to process through. And it's like a cloud, right? A cloud in the sky going by. It does dissipate. And it's like a muscle that we need to flex. If we practice every day when things are not really, really super intense, then it's easier to just sit with our grief and maybe we'll cry, right? I mean, there's times when I just have a tear. Yeah.
Or cuss or whatever, it's just a lot like an infant. Like, I think we're so much smarter about emotions when we're dealing with infants. If your child is crying, I learned early on when with my first child, because I wasn't a natural mother of infants, that I would pick her up. She had that evening kind of colic, crying. I would pick her up and desperately trying to get her to quit crying and shake and sing and, do all the things. And I learned over time that I was causing her anxiety, by me trying to fix her and stop it, which is what we do with our emotions and our grief in
Right.
particular. Whereas when I just relaxed and picked her up and accepted, she's crying and she's processing the day. And I don't understand all of what's going on, but if I just come around her with love and, trust and safety and acceptance, she would process her little day and be done in 5 or 10 minutes, whereas before it was like hour and a half of me running around. And anyway, you know what I'm saying.
And from where we're coming from, the energy work, she's probably absorbing that from you too.
Exactly. I didn't know about that back then, but she absolutely was absorbing it.
Yeah, and then her ego is like, it makes the separation, right? And that, okay, what's going on with my mom? This is not safe here. And then the blame.
Yes. And so we
Yeah,
have, I guess, aspects of consciousness that are, I hope I'm using that correctly, but that are like the mother coming around our grief and trying to
yeah,
hold it and make it worse. And they're either avoiding it or they're judging it, trying to fix it. There's all different ways we can handle grief. Whereas if we just come from our higher selves and sit with it and let it be there and let it come up and out, like the our soul is designed to
yeah,
beautifully and effectively process our emotions.
yeah. It really is, and we're not taught to do that at all. It's yeah, we're not. If I think if we're taught to do that as children, I just know with my children, they can just zip through something really quick.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. It's half
Okay.
of what I do for a living is teaching people how to sit with their emotions.
Right,
I've
right.
got, had a 30-year career because our culture is so poor. We've done such a poor job. It's just not woven into our culture to teach people to do that. It's like, don't feel, only feel good.
Yeah, yeah. And I feel like other places in the world really honor that, right? Like maybe Asian culture, Hispanic culture. But for some reason, our Western world is just kind of push that aside, right? I don't know. I don't know the origin point of that. It's been there a while
I
now.
think it's that broken masculine energy rather than, the balance of divine feminine and divine masculine.
Yeah, yeah, that's been around for way too long. Yeah, so yeah, okay. So Jill is saying it only takes around a minute, at 30 seconds to allow it to process. So that's nothing, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Let me see. Let me see if there's any questions. I'm just going to look on Facebook. Yeah, so a couple of people ask if we can do some clearings around long-term grief, um, losing a parent as a young child. This is Liesel. Also, yeah, okay. And then she says, loss of not knowing some of her grandparents because they died young, and grief isolation experience because those close to her or us don't understand what we do and really cannot talk to them about it. You mean about energy healing? That's interesting.
Mm.
Yeah, okay. So, yeah, so I mean, I think it's really hard to have this conversation without talking about what's happening right now, right? And I feel like there is a lot of separation between, especially people I work with, people that are deciding to get vaccinated and people are deciding not. And I know this relates to Liesl, people in our families did decide, and we're kind of ostracized if we decided not to, right? And that's a definitely, would you say that's a grieving process? I mean, it's a separation, it's an isolation, it's a constant day to day where you're like over there and they're over here. And this is people that they're your family, right? And Janet is saying the same.
And that actually is the grief I'm talking about, that people are in denial of, is that we're living in a world of polarization, whether it's about the vaccination issue, whether it's about politics, whether it's about, broken systems. Like, we're living in this all or nothing world that's dividing us a lot of times from people in our own families. And we're so attached that the belief is a dividing line. I don't know how to say it. Like, we're so attached that my belief is right, or my belief is this, or that belief is wrong, and that good or bad is going, like, it sounds like I'm condescending beliefs, because I'm not trying to at all. But anytime we're tightly attached to a belief, and there's a lot of fear of judgment, when there's a lot of fear attached to it, then there's going to be loss, there's going to be division, and with division comes loss.
Yeah, so I tell people what to look at personally is where's the separation for you? Why do you feel like this is good and this is bad? Why can't you honor what they're doing and try and come to some neutral ground, whether it's to do it, not to do it, anything, right? Why is there such a harsh, it's a judgment, no? And really the judgment is, which comes from a fear, right? Judgment comes from fear.
Always.
Yeah, right. So, and the other people should be doing things that they're not doing.
I tell my clients all the time, when they say, well, I should be doing this or I should be doing that, I say, don't should on yourself. Well, we shouldn't be shitting on others either. It's a circle. The shoulds are always fear and judgment and ego-based.
Yeah. And this inner critic, and that's the topic for next week, actually, which is another Leslie topic. Okay. We're working on that inner critic part of ourselves, that critical part that wants to judge, but it's really us judging ourselves. If you look at that, we do project it out, but the first judgment is of ourselves. Yeah. Okay. So we could definitely do that. And Melissa asked if we could do an aura cleanse, and we can definitely do that. Let's see. Yeah, so Jill is saying her husband and I came to a place that they're both trying to protect each other. So one had and one hasn't in our own ways. Yeah, so basically nothing is wrong, right? If we have 100% conviction and we have unconditional love in our heart, then it doesn't matter, right? And we don't have fear, because I'm working with people that have and that haven't, and some people that have, they really need a lot of clearing work to get over that. And then I see people that haven't vaccinated and they're just fine. They're unconditional love coming out of them. It's not a big deal, right? Because they're 100% behind their choice, and there's no separation, there is no polarity. And that goes with everything, right?
Yes.
So
yeah. Yes, the vaccine is just a really great example, like, to apply to all of the belief systems that divide us. whether we're talking about religion, whether we're talking about politics, in any of it, education, any of it.
Yeah, yeah. Denise is saying that she has a loss of family from divorce. Right. Yeah, that can be really difficult.
Yes,
It's sides.
because divorce so often, I think you might have said this, my phone went out, my earbuds went out for a second, but divorce so often forces, not forces, but has the energy of um, trying to get families to choose sides, um, to choose between. Um,
Yeah, yeah, to make a
so
choice.
there's a double loss there. There's a loss of family, and then there's the loss of this safety, um, if that makes sense,
Right.
especially for children of divorce.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I personally have experienced that. It's not easy. Right. Should I talk about that? Yeah, okay, let me see what I can say. Yeah, because I mean, I can share my personal experience. So my children, um, yeah, they feel the loss, right? They're suffering, and they just want mom and dad back together, which is never, especially one of my boys, which, is obviously not going to happen, and they have a difficult time seeing another way, because they don't know another way. They've just known mom and dad, right? And my boys are young, so they're only 12. But this is something that happened when they were like five or six. So even now, they still, with all the work they get from me and how open I am, they still probably want me and their dad to get back together. And then so what I do is I just acknowledge that, right? Yeah, I acknowledge that. I understand that, but that doesn't work for me. And they're like, oh, I know, I want you to be happy, they say. And we miss that, right? Yeah. So that's really beautiful that they can do that. Yeah.
And it's so beautiful that you, as their parent, can um, tolerate their upset. So often as parents, it hurts us to see our children hurt. And so then we go into unconscious ways of trying to shut down their hurt. And you're
Yeah.
not doing that. You're allowing them to have those feelings. Um, and
Yeah.
that's so important.
Yeah. So much guilt around you bring children into the world, right? And then you completely mess it up. Oh dear. But not really. I don't know. I
It's
don't
a
know.
part of the path.
Yeah, there you go. Thank you. Okay. So let's do something. Do some clearing. Okay, now I've got a ton of questions. Yeah, so Janet is just talking about taking sides, children taking sides. Okay.
Yeah.
So Lisa says, how can we help our kids with the loss of divorce? Are you able to
Are you
answer
asking
that?
me?
Yeah, I was just.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, I think you just gave a beautiful example. You acknowledge that it is a loss, and
Yeah.
you allow them the space to have their feelings. And I always tell parents when they're considering a divorce and considering talking to children about it, that they want to make sure they send the message that it's not your fault,
Yeah.
because children, in an effort to handle something that is too overwhelming, in an effort to handle a loss that's too overwhelming to process, they sometimes blame themselves, because you can change yourself. You can't change your parents, but you can change yourself. So really letting children know and understand that it's not their fault. Really letting them know that uh, they're and demonstrating, working really hard with your soon to be ex or ex to show love, to demonstrate love in the midst of falling apart. And that's probably the hardest thing to do,
Yeah.
is to get that part of the relationship right, to get the co-parenting part, because children will do as well with a divorce as the parents do.
Yeah.
And so if the parents don't have a ton of dysfunction, we're all going to have some, because the relationship wouldn't be ending if it were wonderful, right? If it didn't have some dysfunction in it. But handling the end of the relationship as well as you possibly can is the best way to help your children. And then acknowledging that they have feelings. And I always tell parents to find a trustworthy adult in their lives that is objective, that they feel safe with, whether it's a professional help, because it doesn't always need to be professional help, like an aunt or a parent of a child, of their best friend, a, a cousin who's 10 years older, somebody that's safe, that loves them, that they can go to and say, this is what's hard about mom, and this is what's hard about dad, because they're not going to be able to process everything with one parent or the other because of their protectiveness in a lovely way of both parents. So letting them know they can talk to you about it, letting them know they can feel it with you and in front of you, but also giving them an objective place to process it.
Yeah.
I hope that's
Wow.
helpful.
Yeah, so much. So good. Yeah, I know for my boys, they're really protective of their dad. They don't want to do anything that they do with their dad with me. They're like, no, we do that with dad.
All right.
So sweet. I'm like, okay, they play golf. So that's your thing. We won't play golf.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's really finding a balance, honoring their feelings, knowing that they are just honoring that they are love, that they have enough love to give. It's not that they are not giving love or they're not lovable. Was with one of my boys. Oh, am I not lovable?
Exactly.
Is it my fault? What did I do wrong? Well,
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Well,
It's not their fault, and we can still love each other. There's still going to be love, like your father and I, your mother and I, we still have love for each other. And reminding our children, there's nothing you can do that will ever make me want to divorce you. Nothing, ever. Because that's sort of the other unconscious fear is, ooh, something happened in this relationship that was supposed to be forever, and now it's broken. That could happen to me. Like, that's probably the biggest unconscious fear, that and blaming themselves. And
my
so
kids.
reassuring.
Yeah.
Your kids.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm interrupting.
No, you go.
Yeah, one of them was, oh, you're going to leave me now. You're going to abandon me. And when he was with his dad, would call me all the time and late at night and wouldn't like get off the phone. And wow, so and that's difficult. That's not easy, right? To
No,
sort
it's
of
not.
being on the phone with him and just making sure he's okay. I'm blanking on the words, right? And just reassuring him, there we go, that he's okay, that he is enough, and I love him, and that I'm never going to leave him. And I think for a while they thought, oh, what's coming next, right? They were just waiting for the other shoe to drop, that mom would do something crazy, something else crazy.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Because their foundation of trust in the universe is sort of ripped,
Yeah.
so that they learn to be a little hyper vigilant that something else might happen.
And I don't think you can realize that until you're actually doing it. You have really no idea, even though someone can tell you, like yeah.
Yeah,
And
there's no way we can avoid any of this. It's accepting, kind of like we're talking about grief, accepting that grief is there. You can't avoid grief. Like accepting that these aspects of divorce, these losses and these wounds that come out of divorce, that they're a part of the flow. Like your children don't have to get stuck in those wounds, but you can't prevent them from having those wounds. They just need to be allowed to have them, process them, and
yeah.
and yeah.
Yeah, so Lisa, I think being open and being their grieving process. I know you have older children. Well, you have children my age too. But as much as they can express what's going on instead of keeping it within themselves, because that will come out in adulthood, right? In early adulthood,
Yes.
when they get a lot of freedom, that comes out with defiant behavior or alcohol or, yeah, all those ways to pacify that anger, because it turns nasty, right? It can turn to anger and
It absolutely can.
yeah,
Yeah, anger or self-hatred or,
that's so
constant anxiety, OCD. I mean, it can turn a bunch of different ways. But yes, anger is definitely a common emotion associated with grief because anger is one of the more powerful emotions we have. And, divorce, kids feel so powerless and out of control.
yeah. Yeah, so the self-hatred, one of my boys does that, did do that. Yeah, yeah. And that's really hard as a parent to watch, right?
Oh,
Because
yes.
you want to blame yourself. You do
Yeah.
blame yourself,
Yeah.
right?
So everybody needs help with, like, parents need help not hating themselves and not blaming themselves. Children need help not
Yeah.
hating themselves and not blaming themselves. Um,
So a way we can help our kids is if we can do the work ourselves, because we're a mirror, right? So that's
That's
it
it.
really.
That's it.
Because and be open and honest, which I was always with my kids. So that was really a saving grace, because they were always very free with their emotions and how they were feeling. And that pretty much continued, even though their emotions changed and were like, I hate you, mom. And I was like, yeah, I really get that because I did really get
Yeah.
that. Yeah. And it's okay to say that. And I'm not going to react to that, right? Because I know that
Right.
situation. And it's a reaction, right? It's not.
It's a
It's,
grief reaction. Just like we said, if I sit with my own grief, I might cry or I might cuss. So our children are going to do the same thing, but they're going to, maybe they won't cuss at us. Hopefully they won't, but I don't know. Depends on if you've got triggers around that. But they might get angry and say, I hate you, I hate you, I hate you. And that's legitimate. And just letting that be there because they'll finish processing that and move, not being afraid. But um, if we are afraid, that means we've got more work to do, right?
yeah, I mean, last night I just said, this is so interesting. Last night I said to one of my boys, if you hold a grudge, it hurts in your heart, not the other person doesn't really feel that. And he said, Mom, I hate it when you're right. Because he could feel that that was true.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow. Wow.
Yeah, I feel that I'm hurting myself by holding a grudge. So, but until we know, until we can feel that as grown-ups, we can't really educate our children in that. I mean, we can say the words, but they don't really have any meaning
Yes.
unless unless it's felt, right? A felt experience.
And
Yeah.
that's for everything. In counseling, one of the things I learned in graduate school is you can only take your clients as far as, in terms of personal growth, as far as you've been willing to go yourself and your own personal growth. And it's the very same thing for
Yeah.
parenting. We can only teach our children how to be emotionally healthy to the degree that we've learned ourselves how to be emotionally healthy.
Yeah, and that's why I say in energy healing, people say, "Oh, what can I do?" It's always go back to yourself. If there's a block, it's somewhere within you. Go find that, and then the whole world opens up.
And don't judge it when you find it,
Yeah,
because the judgment of it gets in the way of releasing it completely,
right. Yeah. Okay.
which is that inner critic I think we're going to talk about next week. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
um,
And that comes out in so many ways, like guilt tripping, or yeah, the perfectionism. There's so many ways that gets kind of, what's the word, distorted. So that's the
yeah.
topic Yeah. Okay, so Denise says, feel like children, so she's feeling like her children will get divorced because she was, is that what you're saying, Denise? Or abandon her. Okay. Yeah. Okay, which then feeds all the past childhood trauma. So it feeds your childhood trauma, Denise? Is that what? Or it feeds your children's childhood trauma? Because obviously there are generational cycles. Do you notice that parents, if your parents were divorced, then, or you, yeah. So,
Absolutely.
yeah. Is there anything else to say around that? I don't.
Well, and I guess what I tell parents who will say to me, you know, I come from divorce and now here I am divorcing and I don't want my children to do this. And what I always tell them is, then do your own work. You know,
Yeah,
you get better and you will help them get better and you teach them to do their own work. And they may be the generation that breaks the cycle. And that's with a lot of things, not just divorce. Like that's with addiction, that's with depression, that's with all the mental health issues.
right. Absolutely. Yeah, that's great. Okay, let's do some energy work.
Yes.
Okay, so let me just see what we're going to do. Okay, 1 second. Generational. Yeah, what I'm just seeing right now is how, that's interesting. I mean, just because we talked about, we were doing aspects of consciousness last week, and it's possible you could have a divorce aspect of consciousness. So I'm looking at this for you, Denise, and I have this also. So what you'd be clearing around that is everything that's unhealed around that divorce. Okay. And then I'm seeing genetically also, generationally, genetically in our DNA, how we are actually carrying that. So yeah, that's interesting. Well, it's kind of like, yeah, I don't want to say it's a time bomb because that's just a terrible word, but it's like it's on around divorce that it is there. I'm seeing genetically that there is a predisposition to that, and that we do have to consciously, like you're saying, do the work for ourselves, because otherwise that is going to detonate. That is going to go off. I don't want to use those words. I don't know any other words, but yeah, in my mind's
Yeah,
eye,
it'll come to fruition. Yes. You'll
yeah,
realize that energy, that consciousness.
yeah, and that we have to, um, work harder, right, to to not have that, to not do those same patterns, because obviously our parents are our primary masculine and feminine role models, and we so easily take on their roles, right? We find, if we're female, we tend to find men that are like our fathers, right? Do you see that? And vice versa.
My first therapist who really like just nailed so many things in me, she told me, Leslie, if you don't do your own work, you're going to grow up and marry one parent and become the other. And I was like, oh God, I love my parents, but I don't want that to happen. Let's work. But then
Yeah,
we can do the positive side of that too, not just the negative side of that. And I've seen that to be true in my life, you know, and in the lives of my clients.
yeah, yeah. So the positive aspects of your parents.
yeah, like as we heal our stuff, you'll see what you're drawn to is also some of the positive aspects of your parents, not just
Right.
the negative.
Okay, so let's me please. Okay. So yeah, so let's clear around divorce. Let's do that. Okay, so we're just getting, let's do a little grounding, centering. So this will clear for everyone that's watching right now. And then anyone that will watch on the replay, whether it's in the 7 Days of Healing group or anywhere else. Okay, so we can, yeah. Okay, so let's do it genetically, generationally. So we're going back before the beginning of time. To purify our DNA back to its perfected state. To heal all effects of divorce, separation, separation with another, separation from self. Okay, and anywhere that our DNA was distorted, again, bringing that back to perfected state. And we're asking that to activate now. And this doesn't have to be around divorce. So any separation, we've all experienced separation. Relationships that we thought would work out that didn't. And separation from self. And any grief and loss and fear and any other emotional energies that go along with this. We're asking those to dissolve, dismantle. And within each of our families, each of our family groups, our family unit that we have right now, we are asking for those to be united, joined in unconditional love and peace. And anything that's not a resonant match to that, or that's not a frequency match, dissolves, dismantles now within us. And also we can ask that for the rest of our family. That doesn't mean to say that that will happen for them. But if you're watching right now, you can ask if that's appropriate for you. You can couple the benefits of this for anyone else in your family. Or we can just ask for any energy, anything that's not in our highest and best alignment for our family. Cleanse, close, releases. That's a good way to state. To receive at the right time, right place. What's best for us, what's best for them. And to come into harmony, unity, oneness. And to know that there is no separation. We are one. We are one soul. So we're all fragments of one soul, all rays of one soul. And just honoring our process right now. If you're struggling, placing your hands on your heart if that feels right for you. And just honoring any grief, any sadness, any loneliness that you're experiencing right now. And if any emotion comes to the surface, just breathe through that. If any tears come, just let them come. Tears are very cleansing. And you can just see these emotions like clouds in the sky. Just let them pass through without attaching any meaning or significance to them. I know that's really difficult. But just let them pass through. So if we can do this rather than attach a meaning to it, it eliminates that I, like this is mine. When we attach a thought to it or a belief to it, it's like we're claiming it as our own, instead of the beautiful process that Leslie talked about of how we're designed to let these emotions just naturally go through us, to process through us. When we give it a name, when we give it a belief, when we attach someone to it, they did this to me, that creates a whole secondary issue. Okay. That was beautiful. Thank you. Okay. Yeah, so if you find that you have that divorce aspect of consciousness, you want to get that to a 10. So if you weren't in last week, some people say, why do you not get that to a 0? So we want to get it to a 10, which is a 10. It's happy, everything's healed, and then it dissolves. There's no need for that aspect of us because we've taken care of all that emotion, all that emotionality, all those beliefs, negative beliefs. And also, again, we talked about this too, Leslie, about sometimes we need the physical as well as the energetic. And to have a good, if we're just talking about a divorce or a dysfunctional relationship, to have that physical conversation that can heal much. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just gonna ask, like, something about what you said was so beautiful, and the work you just did. And I was realizing, divorce is sort of the whole theme for all the polarizations that are going on in our world right now. As a result of them, we are all feeling divorced from whatever the opposite side is, whether it's around racism, whether it's around the vaccine, whether it's around all of it. And it's just like, it just hit me while you were talking, the healing you were doing, like, it just hit me that we all need that healing that you just did for us is the healing we need around the divorces that are happening around ideas and concepts, and we can be two separate entities and still heal, and that we're not right or wrong or good or bad. Anyway.
Yeah, and divorcing parts of ourselves, right? I mean, we could have a divorce, just all the parts of ourselves that we've just let go and we don't acknowledge, or we push aside because we don't like them. I mean, that's another way that you could use that.
Yes.
To heal those parts. Yeah, I love that. Thank you. Yeah, okay. Let me just tune in. Okay, does anyone have any other questions? I feel like we are coming to the end here. Oh, it's really beautiful. Yeah, so let's just do this for Melissa. Okay, can we do this now? Let's see, eliminating. Yeah, okay, so let's do this around an aura cleanse to initiate this. She's asking around fear. So basically everything is fear, right? Everything boils down to fear. If it's not love, it's fear. You could clear everything as fear. So we're asking that our aura be cleansed, purified. Okay, so any tears in our aura, auric field, or anything obstructing that. Any debris, which is like hanging on, any cords, we're asking those to dissolve, dismantle. Anything that we're holding on to mentally that's affecting our mental body, we're asking these beliefs to dissolve so we can establish, cement new beliefs around unity, love, oneness, wholeness, openness, flow. So flow is really important. And to go with change. We hate change, right? We don't. I feel like there have been times in my life when I would literally sooner have died than change. And that's pretty strong, right? That is, and that if I did change, I would literally die. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Even though what I was doing was so detrimental to me, right? Yeah, so let's clear that. Because I know we've probably experienced a version of this. To be able to see the bigger picture and the change, be able to identify, and even if it's intuitively knowing or intellectually knowing that when change is calling us, that we can just stick our toe over the edge and take a little dip. That's all it takes, right? It doesn't take much for us to experience that. And that changes the frequency, that changes the energy, and that brings more of that in. Okay, and we're doing a clearing of any fear of death, whether that's symbolic or physical, emotional, mental, and embracing the new, and anything that needs to clear that's blocking all of us from embracing the new. Cleanse, clears, releases now. To receive at the right time, right place, making sure that all our detox pathways stay open. And knowing that we have the highest wisdom for ourselves, and we don't need to worry about that. Intellectually, we're so super smart. Energetically, multidimensionally, we are all just so amazing. And we've already got it figured out. I guarantee that. I know that to be true. Yeah. So just embracing that and allowing people to experience that knowing as much as they are able right now. And if we can put that on a timer, let's try and do that. Okay, so if any way we can put that on like a time release for people to experience that what I just said when they're ready. Yeah, to experience that as they're ready. I don't know how else to say that. I'm just saying like a sand timer, a dropper, for them to get drops of their own enlightenment and the realization of that at the right time, right place for them at their own speed. So nothing is ever lost. And just to know that that's there, it's coming, it's working, and it's all working for you. And so it is. Okay, beautiful. Okay, thank you so much, Leslie. Amazing.
Oh, no, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So much love, so much grace to all of you for doing the work, for showing up. And I'll check the comments after if anyone else has any questions. Okay, I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.